Well, good morning, everybody. As it's 9:30, going to go ahead and get started, pull the meeting together. I want to greet everyone and fellow committee members and public. And my name is Jay Bradshaw. I'm honored to serve as the chair of the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee. And I want to thank everyone again for your participation and joining us today. This will be our final Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee meeting of 2024. We have one action item today and three informational items on the agenda. First up, we'll have the proposed 2025 Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee schedule for adoption. Then we will move on to the following information items. Francis D. Sanchez will present a status update on the draft 2025 State and Local Transportation Needs Assessment Report. Francis previously presented on this at the May 31st TAC meeting on the state and local transportation needs assessment and its connection to the road charge. Today, we will hear from her about the draft findings and feedback provided during the development of the report's draft policy recommendations. Following this, Lauren will provide, from Caltrans, will provide an update on engagement and recruitment efforts for the public-private roads and Senate Bill 339 revenue collection pilots. Before we begin, we have some brief instructions regarding the webinar and public comment for those joining us virtually. Justin will provide these instructions. I believe we have Justin here.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Welcome to the November 2024 Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee meeting. The California Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee was established in 2014 by Senate Bill 1077 to study alternatives to the gas tax, gather public comment, and to make recommendations to the California State Transportation Agency regarding the design of a road charge pilot program. Today's meeting agenda can be found on our website at www.catc.ca.gov. American Sign Language translation is being provided for this meeting. You should see the interpreters on your screen. Members, should you have any questions or comments during the meeting, please let us know by raising your hand or otherwise get our attention on camera and wait for the chair to call on you. You can also send inquiries and comments through the questions tabs that can be read to presenters and the audience on your behalf. Please mute your microphone except when you intend to speak to minimize outside noise and feedback. The chair will do their best to call on each of you in turn. We hope that you will turn on your camera while speaking if you have one. Because we do not have a quorum present in person, every vote will need to be a roll call vote. Presenters, if you're on the agenda to make a presentation, please do your best to be succinct. Please remember to speak. Pardon? Please remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our interpreting service adequate time for accurate translation.
We're getting some echo, Justin.
Yeah, pardon that. We're working on that in the room. We hope that you will also turn on your camera during your presentation if you have one. Members of the public, we welcome comments from the public as a part of each item at this meeting. For those attending in person, please submit a speaker slip to the clerk, or in this virtual environment, please submit that through the Q&A tab. For those attending via Zoom, you should see the webinar control panel, likely located on the bottom of your screen. There you'll find the raise hand and Q&A buttons. We encourage you to use the raise hand feature as soon as we reach the item to give the system time to acknowledge you. Committee staff will let you know when it's your turn to make your comment. Alternately, you may use the Q&A button to submit your comment, and staff will read that on your behalf. Again, as a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link and phone number to access the webinar. These should not be shared with other participants, as this can create confusion for staff when making comments. Do your best to be concise. Remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our interpreting services adequate time for accurate translations. Be sure that your comments add new information. If you agree with the comments of a previous speaker, simply make that statement. We ask that you make your point in 2 minutes or less. If, for some reason, we have many speakers on any single topic, we reserve the right to limit comments to 1 minute if needed. Thank you for joining us today. We know your time is valuable, and we appreciate you sharing some of it with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Justin, also, if you could call the roll now, that'd be great.
Yes, happy to. Chair Jay Bradshaw.
Present.
Vice Chair Steve Finnegan.
Present.
Asha Agrawal.
Present.
Lisa Bartlett,
Present.
Terry Benzel, Lauren Kay,
I'm here.
Jim Adaffer,
I'm here.
Pam O'Connor,
Here.
Robert Poitras, Misty Rickwalt, Misty Rickwalt.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Eric Sauer,
Present.
Stacy Atkins Salazar,
I'm here, thank you.
thank you. Lee Tien, Senator Josh Newman, Assembly Member Lori Wilson. Chair, we have quorum.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, everyone. Next up, we're going to hear from our esteemed Executive Director, Tanisha Taylor, who will give us an update on behalf of the commission.
Thanks, Chair Brad, Sean. It's always great to see everyone and welcome to the meeting today. I want to start by having a few membership changes. First, I want to welcome Misty Rickwalt from the Karuk tribe to her first meeting. Misty is the Director of Transportation for the Karuk tribe and is involved in multiple committees, which includes the California Department of Transportation's Native American Advisory Committee and the Federal Highway Administration's Resilience Initiatives Technical Advisory Group. Welcome, Misty.
Thank you.
I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank Tam Tran, our former student assistant here at the Commission, for all the work she has done, especially with the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee. We wish her the best in her future endeavors and want to congratulate her on finishing her dual master's program, quite impressive, from San Jose State University in Urban Planning and Environmental Studies. Lastly, I would like to welcome our new commission staff members, our new commission staff member, Jennifer Tendick. Jennifer brings over 15 years of land use and transportation planning and policy experience. Her experience includes being a senior regional planner for the Sacramento Area Council of Governments and director of planning and policy at the California Association of Councils of Governments. Jennifer has recently joined our team from the California Air Resources Board, and she will be working on the needs assessment and the road charge program here at the Commission with Francis. Welcome, Jennifer. It's great to have you on the team. I look forward to the items on today's agenda to help continue these efforts forward progress, and want to recognize Francis Diaz-Sanchez, Tam Tran, Nina Jose Me, and Laura Pennebaker for their work in preparing this meeting for you all today. Chair Bradshaw, that concludes my remarks, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Executive Director Taylor. Are there any questions or comments? Anything online, Justin, that I'm missing?
Sure, we're not seeing any requests for comments.
Oh, Douglas, thank you. Thank you very much. Again, if I can join in congratulations and thank you for your service, TM, and welcome, Misty. Thank you for stepping up. Appreciate it. Look forward to working with you. And as always, thank you to the staff that without them, none of this would happen. So thank you very much. Okay, next up, we're looking for approval of minutes for the May 31st, 2024 TAC meeting and review of action items. Minutes from the May 31st meeting have been provided for your review and approval. Francis, if I could, before we approve these or look to approve these, can you remind us of the action item that came up at the last meeting? Yeah.
One moment.
I think they're just having some audio issues in the room, so stand by, please.
Just to make sure I have it right while we have a moment, Justin, on the roll call votes, will you be calling those?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Chair Bradshaw, there were no action items in the last meetings.
There was no action items. My apologies. Okay, look to entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
I'll move approval, Steve Finnegan.
Thank you, Steve. Do I hear a second?
Second. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Justin, if you could take the roll vote, I'd appreciate it. We'd appreciate it.
Certainly. Chair Jay Bradshaw,
Aye.
Vice Chair Steve Finnegan,
Aye.
Asha Agrawal,
Aye.
Lisa Bartlett,
Aye.
Terry Benzel, Lauren Kay,
Yes.
Jim Madaffer,
Yes.
Pam O'Connor,
Yes.
Robert Poitras, Misty Rickwalt,
Aye.
Eric Sauer,
Yes.
Stacy Atkins Salazar,
Yes.
Lee Tien, Senator Josh Newman, Assembly Member Lori Wilson. Chair, the item passes.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, everyone. We'll move now to member reports. We can hear from committee members. Members, do you have any reports you would like to give today regarding road charge?
None for
I see your hand up, Steve. Go ahead.
Great, thanks. Really not much of a report, but I just wanted to share with the group that I'm going to need to leave by 10:30 in the morning. So I will be sticking with you guys until then, and I'll catch up and find out about things afterwards as well. Really appreciate everyone's involvement with this as we look to next year. And I think it's high time that the state of California gets moving on this issue in a more serious way, and that some of that rests on our shoulders to help guide that effort. So appreciate everybody's help.
Thank you, Steve. Any other committee members would like to report? One last call. Okay, seeing none. We will move on. Thank you very much.
Just to let you know, there's a request for public comment on that.
Oh,
item.
yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you, Douglas. Hey, I'm trying to rush for Steve. No, I'm just kidding. Any public comments? My apologies for that. Not intentional.
Still no request for public comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. I appreciate your help there, as always. Okay, next up, item 6, 2025 Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee meeting dates. Francis will provide the proposed 2025 dates, meeting dates.
Okay. Let me grab some of these dates. And for myself, Chair,
Having a hard time hearing.
Chair, thank you. Let me quickly pull up the. Um,
Yeah, it's Francis, just FYI, we'll take time we need, and comments as well, from the committee. We're having a really hard time hearing you.
Sure, we're going to get her a new microphone. Give us just a sec.
Take the time you need. Thanks, Douglas.
Can you hear me now?
Other than a loud echo,
Does this work now?
yes.
It's Okay. Apologies for that. So Chair, tab 6, staff recommends for tab 6, the road charge technical advisory committee approve the proposed 2025 road charge technical advisory committee meeting dates listed below. The proposed dates for the 2025 road charge technical advisory committee meetings are Friday, February 28th, Friday, April 18th, Friday, July 25th, and Friday, September 19th, all in the year 2025. If changes or additional meetings are needed, staff will work with the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee Chair and Vice Chair to schedule them and will inform the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee members. Commission staff will also coordinate with the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee and notify the public before each meeting regarding whether the meetings will be held in person, virtually, or a combination of the two.
Is that it, Francis? We may have lost audio again. I don't know.
Yes, stand by for that audio, please.
Hi, I'm still here.
Okay. What
Here-
was there more?
Oh,
To your question, Chair Bradshaw, that was the presentation. So if there are any questions for our team, we're
got
happy
it.
to entertain them.
Exactly. Just want to make sure I wasn't cutting Francis off. Any questions for Francis from the committee? All right, seeing none. Are there any public comments or questions? Douglas.
We did not receive any requests to comment from the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. On that, we'll call the roll vote. Justin, please.
Did we get a motion?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, pardon me.
Move Madaffer.
Sleep deprived today. Let me have some more coffee. Do I hear a motion for approval of the proposed dates for next year?
Yeah, motion Madaffer.
Second, Bartlett.
I O'Connor.
Great. It's moved and seconded. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Chair Jay Bradshaw,
Aye.
Vice Chair Steve Finnegan,
Sorry about that.
Asha Agrawal,
Approve.
Lisa Bartlett,
Yes.
Terry Benza, Lauren Kay,
Yes.
Jim Madaffer,
Yes.
Pam O'Connor,
Yes.
Robert Poitras, Misty Rickwall,
Yes.
Eric Sauer,
Yes.
Stacy. Thank you. Stacy Atkins. Thank you.
Yes.
Lee Tien, Senator Josh Newman, Assemblymember Lori Wilson. Chair, the motion is approved.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. That brings us to item number 7, which will be a status update on the draft 2025 state and local transportation needs assessment. Francis will present an update and on the needs assessment with preliminary findings on the projected transportation needs and revenue. Francis.
Thank you, Chair. Again, tab 7 is an informational item, and it is a status update on the draft 2025 state and local transportation system needs assessment. Pursuant to Senate Bill 1121, the California Transportation Commission is preparing the draft 2025 state and local transportation system needs assessment. In January, Commission submitted an interim report on the needs assessment to the legislature. Subsequently, Commission staff hosted 2 technical workshops, 2 policy recommendation workshops, and a series of stakeholder work group meetings from September to October to solicit feedback as the draft needs assessment continues to be developed. This information is provided in the table below in this book item outlining the milestones to finalize the needs assessment. Commission staff also provided an overview on the Senate Bill 1121 State and Local Transportation Needs Assessment at the May 31st, 2024 Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee meeting. Commission staff is developing the needs assessment report with information gathered from the following sources. We surveyed the metropolitan planning organizations and regional transportation planning agencies about their regional transportation plans and have been gathering information on transportation needs and revenues. Commission staff has been working with the consulting firm NCE and the California Department of Transportation to analyze these responses. Commission staff and NCE are analyzing the transportation needs identified in the 2023 State Highway System Management Plan, Draft California State Rail Plan, the California Transportation Plan, and the Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. Additionally, Commission staff and NCE have analyzed two recent reports projecting the state transportation revenues, the Legislative Analyst's Office assessing California's climate policies, implications for state transportation funding and programs, and the Meta Transportation Institute's How Will California's Electric Vehicles Policy Impact State-Generated Transportation Revenues Projecting Scenarios through 2040. With that, lastly, in the staff report, it just highlights our timeline for the needs assessment. And with that, I will now go to the presentation queued up for the committee. Next slide, please, Brandy. Again, the needs assessment overview. Broadly speaking, Senate Bill 1121 again requires the transportation to prepare a 10-year statewide transportation needs assessment. And this needs assessment will be updated every 5 years. As noted in the book item, the intent of this report is to assess the cost to operate, maintain, and grow the statewide multimodal system, with particular consideration on the cost to address climate resiliency, what those costs are against our available transportation revenues, and to provide recommendations to address any revenue shortfall. Next slide, please.
Just
So
really
a
sorry
very
to-
high level.
Sorry to interrupt, just a reminder for our interpreter, if we could slow down a little bit. Appreciate it.
Yeah, will do.
Thank you.
At a very high level, these are the preliminary draft findings in the needs assessment report. We are seeing a transportation needs of roughly $674.4 billion with a 10-year revenue based on all the regional transportation plans and the extended fiscal needs survey coming in at $428.2 billion. So the total shortfall that we're seeing currently is $277.3 billion. Next slide, please. This is the 10-year statewide needs and revenue summary. As you can see here again, this is how each of the assets, the transportation assets, are broken down and the broader funding source categories of what our transportation needs and revenues are. Next slide, please, Brandy. This is in our analysis, as noted earlier, the needs assessment has taken into consideration 2 additional reports in addition to our own needs assessment analysis, highlighting what the potential impact to our transportation revenues could be from zero emission vehicles and essentially cleaner fleet. So with the Legislative Analyst's Office, there is a $29.9 billion reduction there that they're seeing based on their 2 scenarios. With ours, we are seeing roughly a $31.1 billion reduction from a cleaner fleet. And with the Banana Transportation Institute, there are 8 scenarios provided with the upper end at $30 billion essentially. So each of the analysis essentially come in close to a $30 billion additional loss from the zero emission vehicles cleaner fleet. Next slide, please. For the draft policy recommendations development, we did hold 2 policy recommendations workshops in May, in June, and are centering the report around the proposed first principles on what is important when we talk about our transportation needs. At the heart of it is sustainable funding. Again, these are proposed first principles that guide what is critical for the investments in our transportation system here in California. We also had the second half of those policy recommendation workshops, discussion scenarios, and we started with 4 discussion scenarios. The first being scenario 1, what if we continued as is and do nothing in addressing the shortfall in our transportation revenues? Again, these are just talking points to get the discussion going with the participants at the workshops to really get ideas of the pros and cons of each of these. Scenario 2 is what if we adjusted existing revenue mechanisms? What would that look like? That includes increasing the state excise gas tax, potentially increasing vehicle registration fees is another option. What are the pros and cons essentially of raising a gas tax or raising vehicle registration fees? What are some of the concerns going down that way? What are some of the challenges? It requires the legislature to be able to pass such a tax increase, and we know that's quite a challenge. And some of the other challenges brought up during the workshop discussion or whether or not that was truly equitable, and if that is really a sustainable avenue in replacing our transportation funding sources. The pros were that they're existing, so there's no new infrastructure necessarily needed to set up there in collecting revenue. Scenario 3, a phased in replacement of existing mechanisms with a sustainable funding source. So we got a lot of feedback on this one, particularly on road charge is being a viable option as being the phased in replacement for the state excise gas tax. Again, another option was discussing using vehicle registration fees initially. But by and large, most people looked at road charge as a possibility of a phase-in replacement over the fuel excise gas tax. Scenario 4 would be a full replacement of the existing revenue mechanisms with a sustainable funding source. And really the difference between scenario 3 and 4 in the discussion was instead of having something come in over time, such as a road charge mechanism or vehicle registration fee being increased, let's say on zero emission vehicles initially before we transition to a road charge, this would just be applied to all vehicles on the road instead of a phased in approach. And there are lots of challenges there. And we are still working through some of the feedback that we've gotten on scenario 4. Next slide, please. Additional takeaways from our sustainable funding source scenario discussions. In May and June, we heard a lot about fair implementation on whatever ultimately would replace the gas tax. So an emphasis on fairness, especially for varying driving patterns and vehicle weights. Equity design, the need for an equitable design of sustainable funding sources with consideration around low income residents and ensuring that it is accessible. Additional incentives, suggestions for incentives to continue the zero emission vehicle adoption, because there was concern about what that looks like, if we started off increasing or implementing road charge with zero emission vehicles or increasing the vehicle registration fee. Creative solutions calls for innovative funding mechanisms beyond traditional taxes. Some additional suggested scenarios to explore within the policy recommendation workshops were to see if we could potentially streamline existing funding and create more flexibility. Explore sustainable funding sources for medium and heavy duty vehicles, tolling, and again, vehicle registration fees came up. So next slide, please. And this is just a high-level review of the discussion scenarios. Again, kind of some of the high-level pros and cons here that we included for everyone today that I went over earlier. So you can take the time to look at this later on, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to follow up and answer them. Next slide, please, Randy. In terms of the methodology or what the inputs that went into the needs assessment thus far as we are developing the draft, stakeholder work group meetings and workshops. Again, the workshops had a technical focus mostly on the information that we were gathering from our regional transportation planning agency stakeholders and the metropolitan planning organizations. We have been getting input and feedback from our interagency equity advisory committee members. The existing regional transportation plans and other transportation reports, such as the State Highway System Management Plan, again, the California State Rail Plan, the Local Streets and Roads Report, and our regional transportation plans. As noted, that survey, the extended fiscal needs survey was something that we sent out to all our regional transportation planning agency and metropolitan planning organization stakeholders on their 10-year revenue projections. Next slide, please. In terms of the full needs assessment timeline, as noted, we submitted the interim report on January 28th of this year. We held those 2 technical workshops in February earlier. The 2 policy recommendation workshops on May 30th and June 17th. We are anticipating on releasing the draft needs assessment for public comment in January, with the final needs assessment being presented at the March California Transportation Commission meeting for adoption, and then we will submit the final needs assessment to the California legislature. With that, that concludes my presentation on the draft 2025 needs assessment.
Thank you, Francis. Appreciate it. Would any member of the committee have any questions or like to start the conversation? Making sure I'm not missing any raised hands. Okay, I'm not seeing any from the committee. Are there any public comments or questions on this item?
Sure, we're not seeing any requests for public comment.
Okay, thank you very much. That was just an information item, so we do not need a vote. That's going to move us to item number 8, overview of road charge financial impact study on super commuters, quote unquote, also an information item. Lauren Prohoda from Caltrans presented an overview on the findings in the road charge financial impact study on super commuters. This study was conducted on behalf of both Road User Charge America and California DOT to focus on financial impacts of road charge on, quote, super commuters in California. Lauren?
All right.
right. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, good morning.
All right, great. I would like to make sure we have conquered the technical difficulties. So great to be with you here this morning. Always a pleasure to be with the TAC. I've been requested to give a couple of presentations this morning to share some information with you. The first being the results of a research study into one of the key questions that we've looked into. As the state's research effort on the idea of road charge has unfolded, we have been looking at how this potential switch could impact a lot of different groups in our state, large and diverse. And we want to make sure that we've done our homework as we're thinking about this idea to make sure that if we do move forward, we have a road charge system that works for all Californians. So you've seen us talk about research on rural drivers, those in disadvantaged communities and things like that. This project dove into the issue of this group of folks we have in California of super commuters that I think we all do think about a lot given the housing challenges in our state. So we did a study looking at trying to understand where the impacts would be for this unique group of people. Next slide, please. We dove into, where do they work? Who are they? What kind of cars do they drive? How do they drive? Things like that. So we could get into an understanding of what these impacts might look like. Next slide, please. I am going to go reasonably, we have a lot of information to get into, so I'm going to go reasonably quickly, but feel free to ask me any questions as we go through this.
Lauren, sorry to interrupt. To appreciate efficiency, but do please keep in mind for our interpreters.
Exactly. Very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the population we're looking at is that of super commuters, which we defined as folks that are commuting more than 3 hours per day round trip. So this is a time-wise definition. It's not necessarily a distance definition. But this category of folks makes about 3.7% of commuters in California. And we compared them to non-super commuters and just kind of recreational drivers as well. Next slide, please. So the first question is, where do super commuters live? And you can kind of see the areas of interest on this map here and kind of the highest contributing counties, where they're coming from. And you see a lot kind of in the mid-central valley. Those folks are going into more San Francisco area. And then of course, San Bernardino and Riverside counties are big contributors as well. Next slide. Then the question is, where are they going? Where are they working? And as you can see here too, San Francisco Bay Area definitely tops the list of where they're headed. And then of course, the LA area as well. But there's some interesting questions, looking at different destinations such as Trinity and some unique outliers, but definitely the Bay Area is a key destination for these workers. Next slide, please. And just, what kind of communities are they coming as we get more into detail, not just below the county level? Where are they? Are they coming from other urban areas, suburban areas? But as you can see from this, you have folks that are coming from rural areas and just really all the regions of our state, but especially you see a little bit of bump of rural drivers coming in to these areas. Next slide, please. And then, what does the ethnic breakdown look like? We see there's a lot of Hispanic community members in this group, white and Asian as well. Then also just on the earnings side, you can see it's spread a little bit, but definitely at the lower end of the income range, you see that you have a little bit higher level of super commuters there, but a little bit of diversity here that we're starting to see. Next slide, please. Occupationally, what kind of workers are needing to super commute? And you can see, and so probably not surprise Chair Bradshaw, as we worked with his staff a little bit on this, but the construction industry is definitely at the top in terms of folks who have to commute a lot to get to their work. Number two, those managers have a very different situation. I like to give a special shout out to number 4 on that list, transportation workers, yay Caltrans people, who are out there safeguarding our system. But it's quite a diverse group of professions that you can see here. Next slide, please. Behavior patterns. So how much are they driving and how much do they carpool? So you can see that so average Californian is going to be around in the 15,000 mile range per year. So you can see that a lot of super commuters are still in that space because some of them are not necessarily driving every day, right? But some of them definitely are in higher mileage categories as well. In terms of vehicle occupancy, you do see them more likely to carpool, and especially much more likely to do large carpool and van pools as they take on these long trips. Next slide, please. So then we get to the key question, as we all know, when we talk about a switch from gas tax to the road charge, it really depends on the vehicle, right? So you see this range of vehicles that they're driving. Most of them are still driving automobiles, SUVs, and trucks. They're driving either really old cars or really new cars. So that's interesting that we're starting to see this split. When we looked into research on rural drivers, for example, there was definitely one typical vehicle that emerged on average, which was a low efficient vehicle. So this is a different situation that we're starting to see here. Next slide, please. So as we looked through how different groups were impacted, you can see here with the changes in revenue, by occupation, you see some folks saving and some folks paying more. There's a range here that you can see, but again, what we're seeing here in some of these results is more diversity than some of our previous research shows in other groups in terms of the impact. Next slide, please. This is again true with race and ethnicity. We're seeing, Hispanic and Black drivers tend to have lower fuel efficiency, so they're maybe paying less in the switch. Asian commuters may be paying more in the switch. So we're, again, seeing these different groups coming out. So putting that all together, as we looked through the data, sorted it in different ways, looked at it at different angles, what we started to see was not one answer like we got when we looked into the impact to rural drivers. Next slide, please. Again, diverse group, but what we started to see emerge was kind of two typical supercommuter types. One is someone who drives a more fuel efficient vehicle than the average Californian. They're likely to work in those managerial roles and more likely to be Asian or white. This supercommuter would pay more under a switch to a road charge system because right now they're not contributing the same amount. So they're at that low end right now that would be brought up into an equal amount. The second type tends to work in the construction or transportation sector. They'll be more on the low income side, more likely to be Hispanic. They're going to be driving an older, less fuel efficient vehicle or a truck because they need it to move tools or things like that. This supercommuter will pay less in a shift to a road charge because right now they're currently paying more. And so they're going to be coming down into that equal situation. So that's kind of the overall takeaway. Next slide, please. And just if you guys have any questions, happy to answer those on what we're seeing here.
Thank you, Lauren. Do any TAC members have questions? I see a hand up, Asha.
Hello, and thank you, Lauren, for, as always, a really interesting presentation with lots of great nuance. I your overall conclusions seemed kind of in line with a lot of the earlier research would lead us to expect. So that's probably a good thing. I did have just a few practical questions. Is this all from 2017 data? Is this all the California Household Travel Survey from 2017?
Yes, this project was finished about a year ago, so the update was not yet out, unfortunately.
Okay, right. And I realize we don't have good data more recently than 2017. So this is not in any way a complaint or criticism, but I think it probably is useful to just acknowledge that this data is by now likely pretty out of date. Best we've got. So it's of course important to look at. And then another thing, I just a practical couple questions. When you talked about the change in revenue, or I think it's actually the change in cost, maybe rather than revenue to drivers, is that monthly or annual?
Let's look at that slide. Hold on. I think it is. You know what? I better check my technical notes.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
I'll get back to you on that. I don't want to guess. And like I said, we finished this about a year ago, so I have to refresh.
Probably good in future just to clarify. And then you also, I had a question about hybrid workers versus full-time. So if I super commute 1 day a week, would I show up as a super commuter? Or is this only people who are doing it, like 5 days a week?
Yeah, we definitely did look at workers who were not necessarily doing the typical 5-day, right?
Okay.
I'd have to double check on the entire range of what that looked like.
Okay.
So I'll need to get back to you on that.
Okay. And then the last thing is just maybe a sort of a comment as we reflect on what all this means, which is that I think there's a tendency to assume that people, quote, have to super commute, like they have no choice. But and to sort of imagine also that this is somebody doing this 5 days a week, which is obviously an enormous time as well as financial cost. It seems like likely though, and this does sort of come out in what you've pointed out, but I think it might be worth highlighting that first of all, some of these people are probably doing this by choice. And COVID made that particularly obvious. Like we saw people, leave the Bay Area and move out to a much, bigger, nicer house somewhere in a rural community and figure, well, I only have to come in once or twice a week. So, and then also again, that the impact is very different if you're doing this once or twice a week than if you're doing it 5 days a week. So just, and then finally, it's a small thing, but it slightly irked me on one of the slides where you were talking about the revenue that the two different groups were paying, like the kind of, office workers driving the small car, more efficient car. You said they're, quote, not contributing an equal amount, whereas the other group was described as contributing more than average. And I would just probably use parallel language for those two, like the first group is contributing less than average and the second group is contributing more than average, or flip it. But it just felt slightly annoying to see that one group is sort of being criticized and the other is not, when that's not necessarily, that's a value judgment, not what the facts state. So.
All right. Thank you for the feedback.
Thank you. Great points. Steve, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have sort of a quick question and a comment. The question I want to make sure I understood is the definition of supercommuter in this is by time and not by miles. Is that right?
Correct. That is correct.
Right. And as I was looking at the data there, obviously time in a free flow situation can equate to miles almost, but time in a very congested environment may be very different, right? So I think that's interesting and something we have to be aware of. And I think miles and time are two different things, especially in urban versus non-urban areas. So I think that's something to be cautious of. And the other reaction I just had real quick is some of this is obviously very obvious on its face. If you have a higher fuel efficient vehicle, you're paying less gas tax, you would pay, arguably depending on the structure, maybe more in mileage charge and vice versa. So those are things that I think are sort of self-evident to a degree. But the extension is then who is being impacted in different ways. So I appreciate the analysis.
Absolutely. And I think, we went with the time definition because of that congestion factor. And I think you saw in that breakdown of the different types of areas, whether urban, suburban, rural, super commuters are coming from all of them, because you could be a super commuter within the Bay Area, theoretically, so that's why we felt it was a better way to kind of capture the impacts that real people are feeling in their lives and schedules.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Are there any other questions or comments from committee members? Just have one through the chair, so to speak, abuse of the chair if you like, Lauren, but on the data that came up, and it's primarily from 2017, correct?
One of the sources is from 2017. We also did get the opportunity to work with your staff to some of your members' data, which I believe is more recent, to kind of look at it in comparison to your members' more current experience. So that was a great thing that we were able to leverage by partnership with you guys.
I realized as I said that, that probably looked like a setup for you to answer that towards my day job. I apologize, not by intention. One of the things I was going to bring up, and again, we were honored to participate, but that could, as new data comes out, the idea of the hybrid, right, work week could obviously change. No secret here that that really came online, no pun intended, in a much broader way and deeper way with COVID. So just something I wanted to point out. I appreciate the analysis for sure, and seeing with intention, looking at equity throughout this. And again, I want to thank you for allowing our membership, who due to cost and housing, their commute hasn't changed a bit, whether it be 2017 or during COVID or right through. So we really appreciate it, and it's recognized. Part of me talking a little bit was to buy a little more time for my fellow committee members in case there's more on this conversation before we go to the public.
Note that all of our research is a point in time, right?
Sure.
We are limited by the data we have, but points in time can be updated. We have already done an update of our back to rural driver study. So as things go over time, if we see value in updating, we can definitely revisit the question, see what kind of changes there may be.
Great. Okay, seeing no hands up, do we have any public comment?
We're not seeing any comments, requests from the members of the public. I would like to remind the members and the public that all of these presentations are available on our website if they'd like to download them and take their time to review them whenever they feel like.
Thank you, Douglas. Appreciate it. Thank you, Lauren, for a great presentation. Thank you, Asha and others, and Steve for a good conversation. I look forward to further conversation on this topic. That will bring us to item number 9, overview of public engagement and recruitment efforts for the road charge. Oh, yep.
My apologies. We did just get a written comment from a member of the public I'd like to read if you have a minute.
Oh, please. Yeah.
Thank you. This is from Anoop Tapasi. Thank you for the presentation. Would people who drive as part of their job throughout the day, sales workers, handymen, delivery drivers, Uber drivers, be considered as super commuters, as they may drive 3 hours throughout the day? The example, people who drive within the Bay Area all around the region, but not to a particular destination.
Thanks, Anoop. That's a great question. I'm going to have to get back on that to you. I don't remember off the top of my head. I apologize. So I'll follow up with you on that, Anoop. And again, this report is on our website at caroadcharge.com and is publicly available.
Very good. Great question from the public. Douglas, are you seeing anyone else or any other comments?
Not seeing any more, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That'll bring us to item 9. Again, overview of public engagement recruitment efforts for the road charge, public-private roads, and Senate Bill 339 revenue collection pilots. Again, going to you, Lauren.
Yep, still me, thanks. So just wanted to give you a brief overview of some of the ways we've reached out and recruited in our recent pilots. They were kind of different, so that we did take some different approaches. So we wanted to just talk through the details of that and the strategy. Next slide, please. So with our public-private roads project that was completed last year, and hopefully we'll be releasing that final report in the near future. This was responding to one of the first questions we always get with road charge, which is what is the impact to rural drivers? And of course, we've done research on that question. And again, that is available at roadcharge.com. But a lot of what we've tried to do in this research program is pairing research, looking at the data, also with more engagement and conversation, right? They give you different things, different types of input and analysis. So as a recommendation coming out of the 2017 initial pilot to do more research engagement with rural communities. So that's what inspired the public-private road project to really engage with rural and tribal communities and really bring their voice to the table, talk about what their concerns are, what their priorities were, and things like that. So as we thought about how to bring these folks into the pilot and into these conversations, very specific community. So it was different from our previous recruitment efforts in that we weren't going to be broadcasting it across the whole state. These proved to be the communities that were most difficult to recruit in the first pilot. So we knew it was going to be a challenge. Next slide, please. So we started really with an organizational approach, reaching out to organizations that serve and represent rural areas. So Farm Bureau, rural county representatives, cattlemen, things like that, engaging them and trying to work through them to outreach to their members, both to get that feedback and invite them to participate. Through some of the organizations such as California State Association of Counties and League of Cities, we were able to spend a lot of time going to rural areas of the state, doing a presentation at local government meetings, whether local transportation commissions or board of supervisors, being present in those communities, trying to give that message that their voice and feedback is important as the state explores this idea. Similarly with the tribes, also a different community to approach. And what we brainstormed and pursued every idea we could think of. Of course, the first one was to go to Caltrans' own Native American Advisory Council, which Misty, of course, is on, and she's been a great source of feedback and assistance, and really get their advice on how to engage with their community and nations. And so you can see we have a long list there. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but we really tried to do everything we could think of to engage with different tribal communities. Obviously, they're very diverse, broad impacts, broad needs. We wanted to learn from them as much as possible. And then we also did some more structured outreach to get this feedback in terms of surveys, focus groups. We had some one-on-one interviews with tribal members and things like that. So we could get this as broad an array as possible. So this was very different than our outreach for other pilots, and the outreach different from the outreach that we did for our current pilot, B339. Next slide, please. So for 339, again, this is a pilot that the legislature directed us to do and had certain goals. And so again, we needed this statewide body of participants. This is also going to be an extra challenge because in this pilot, we are actually collecting revenue from people. And it's a special, unique challenge to reach out to someone and say, hey, join my pilot and pay me money. It's an extra bar to pass. So we really tried to think of how could we get the word out across the state as much as possible. So again, we partnered with Steve and AAA. They put it out in their magazine. We sent 1.5 million emails from the DMV through the registration process to people across the state. From that, we had a lot of media coverage, which was really great.
I hate to pause your flow. Just got to slow it down just a little bit.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We had videos running in the DMV as well for those who were waiting to get served there. We reached out through Peach Jar to school districts and parents. Again, we leveraged different groups, social media. We tried to provide as much content as we could in Spanish as well. So we did have a great response, really, for this. In the public-private roads, because these are very specific communities and outreach was tough, we did not meet our recruitment goals entirely in that pilot. But we have met them in SB 339. We actually had, once the data was cleaned, we had a good 17,000 people express interest in participating in our 800 slots. So that was pretty exciting and still a challenge, because we have found through our pilots and other state pilots that in the transition from folks saying they're interested to actually enrolling them as participants, there's about a 30% transition rate in a usual pilot. We didn't know what that would look like in this pilot where they would actually have to pay money, right? So fortunately, though, we did fill up those 800 slots, and we're now 3 billing cycles in, and we've actually only lost 12 participants so far, which is really, really exciting because we've lost more participants than in our regular pilot. So I think you can see we had very different approaches in these two pilots based on their goals. But hopefully we've been able to be reasonably effective in those. So that's just kind of an overview of the kind of things we've done in terms of outreach and recruitment around these. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lauren. I'll put it to the TAC members if there's any questions or comments. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised. Do we have any public comments, Douglas? Or questions?
I'm not seeing any requests for public comment or any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate your presentations today.
Thank you. Always fun to be with you guys.
I don't want to read minds. We would usually have taken a break at this point, usually right around 10:30. I just want to put it to my fellow committee members. Does anyone need a time for a bio break? We've got a couple more items that will probably be relatively efficient, but I don't want to assume.
I'm good to keep on going.
Great. Anyone not good to keep on going? All right, we'll keep going. Thank you, everyone. So next up, review of action item from today. Francis, I think we had one, correct? Just on the dates. I don't know if we have Francis or not, how much we need to review this.
Oh, I'm here. I had to unmute myself on the actual Zoom app. Sorry, not through my laptop. We have the dates for 2025 as the official action item earlier today. And the only other follow-up, I believe, actually Lauren is going to do, following up with a few questions with Dr. Agarwal and I think a member of the public on the questions they had for her supercommuter study. So those are really the one formal action item and two follow-up items that I captured here today.
Great. Nothing further needs to be voted on today, though. Are there any public comments? Douglas?
Not seeing any request for public comment, Chair.
Okay, I should have asked, I assumed, is there any further on the schedule from the committee members? All right, seeing no hands raised. This brings us to agenda item 11, public comment. Open it up. Douglas will follow your lead.
Thank you, Chair Bradshaw. Not seeing any request for public comment.
Okay. With no public comments, that'll bring us to item number 12, which is for adjournment. I'd like to pause for a minute just to make sure no committee members have a burning desire to share or anything. Again, seeing no hands, that will conclude our meeting today. I want to thank everyone for their participation and attending. Next meeting again will be Friday, February 29th. Look forward to your participation at the next meeting. Wishing everyone a great weekend, and we will see you in the new year. I hope your new year is happy, healthy, and safe.
Thanks all
Enjoy
for a great meeting.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.